Hello everybody, X-Ray LP here coming at you all with another video. And today we have yet another chapter review of chapter 1023. I've got and as usual, there will be spoilers galore, there will not be any editing, and what was that last part? I don't know. Some third thing. Anyway, let's just jump into it. And the way that we start out with this chapter is a little cover page. I normally don't talk about those too much because I normally don't really care about them, but this one, it had Vivi. Like, if any of you guys know, Vivi is one of my all-time favorite characters, and I don't think it's us catching up with Vivi. I don't think it's anything canon. Because Vivi, well, she's either captured by the Marines or she might be dead. And if she's the last one, I'm gonna be mad. Because, like I said, Vivi is one of my all time favorite characters, period. Not just best girl, just one of my all time favorite characters. Not my all time favorite character, but one of my all time favorite characters. And it's actually kind of a really funny and kind of adorable one because, like, she's singing with a bunch of birds, like, on her arms or something. Like, you've seen those Disney movies. And Kara's all jealous, like, leave my human alone. It is really cute. Anyway, love the cover page. So the first thing I want to talk about, as far as the actual chapter goes, is the fact that we start out with Zorro, Sanji versus King and Queen, which is something we were all really hoping to see. And Boss Higoro, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. I don't know. I'm not gonna look it up. Uh, he says, "Everybody, stay out of this fight." And everyone's like, "Well, he's going up against they're going up against King and Queen." I almost said Jack for some reason, but I'll talk about him later briefly. Uh, like they're going up against King and Queen. They need backup. Like, see the look on their faces. We just get in their way. And the way this fight starts out is, you see them just throw a couple hits back and forth between them and King and Queen, and then Sanji starts feeling weird. And Zoro's like, "What's wrong?" And then Sanji says, ever since the second time he's put on that rave suit, his body's felt weird. And that's interesting to me. Like, some people believe that it means that the rave suit is activating, like, Sanji's mutations. Like, if you remember back to Whole Cake Island, Judge, genetically changed to his children so that way they'd be more powerful. But Sanji was born normal, at least so we think. A little more on that later. But personally, I think since he was born at least fairly normal, his body may just not be compatible with the raid suit. So that could be it. That's just my little theory. But it could be the fact that perhaps the potion, that little formula, the chemicals that mother drank in order to keep their children normal, it probably worked more for Sanji than the other kids, but probably not as much as we think. But anyway, that was just a little brief thing between him and Zorro, but more on Sanji later. But one thing I want to talk about is the thing that kind of dumps a lot of information on us, but at the same time it's kind of amusing. Uh, Marco was kind of taken out of the fight last chapter. I don't think he's out of the fight for good because, his Phoenix Stealth Fruit allows him to heal. So I think he just needs a couple minutes and then he'll probably be back into it, but he's actually daydreaming on the battlefield right now. He's just kind of out of it. He is just like thinking back to what Whitebeard told him about King's race and how Marco Marco at the time thought only Marie Joie was on the red line, which the red line goes all the way around the world. There's no way it's just Marie Joie up there. There's gotta be like something else up there. Apparently there was in the distant past, at a place called God's Land. At least that's what it said in this translation. Keep in mind, I'm not watching the official I wasn't reading the official Viz manga translation. I was reading just a regular scan. And in the scan, it says God's land. However, that could be a mistranslation, and it could actually be God's Valley. It might not be, because God's Valley is probably just an island of itself. We're talking about a place that was on the red line in the distant past. So I could be dead wrong about this because keep in mind, God's Valley that was taken out about 40 years ago, at least as far as we know, was taken out 40 years ago. 40 years ago doesn't probably wouldn't be like the distant past. Or it could be. I don't know. Obvious, or it could like be during the Void Century or something. We have no idea. But apparently King's race lived there. And in this place called God's Land or possibly God's Valley. And well, I don't know. Maybe Marie Joie was already up there, and the Battle of God's Valley took out the rest of King's race. Because King being the only survivor of a race that was taken out during the Void Century. And granted, there's nothing that confirms he's the only one left of his race. It's just a very rare race. I don't know. But King being the only survivor of a race being taken out 40 years ago, that is definitely more likely. And a little bit more about King's race later, but like Marco's just daydreaming about this, and then Izo just grabs him and goes and is like, "What is wrong with you? You can't be daydreaming during a battle." And it's like, dude, we've been on the crew for so many years. I knew you were gonna save me. And yeah, that was a interesting exchange, and it's like, yeah, that's true. Like we didn't see much of Izo during the Battle of Marineford. I don't even think they dropped his name, but he's a much bigger character now. And yeah, it's like, yeah, they have been on the crew for so many years. Like Marineford, that's the only time we actually saw the whole crew of the Whitebeard pirates. So we didn't really get to know them very well. Like, yeah, we met Marco before then, we met Jozu before then, we met Whitebeard before then. We didn't know much about them. And so yeah, but they go way back for what would have been maybe 30 years or so. No, not there. Actually, yeah, probably 30 years. I think when Odin joined the crew. Why did I have to think of his name for a sec? When Odin joined the crew, I think Marco was probably around 15 or something. So yeah, that would have been around 40 years, 30 years ago. Yes, time flies. Izo must be older than he looks, or she looks. I think Izo's just a crossdresser. I don't think he's actually transgender or anything. So I'll just say they. I'll say they were on the crew for a long time. They and Marco. It's confusing, but I'm not homophobic. I don't want to sound homophobic. So anyway, just a little bit about Marco's daydreaming, and then we have the Sanji and Queen discussion. He and Queen are just going at it. They're fighting each other, and Queen's like, because remember, Queen and Judge, they have a history. They used to work together at this thing called, what was it called? Deads or something? Dreads? Something like that. They used to work together, and Sanji's like, and Queen's just observing how Sanji can set his feet on fire. And Queen's just like, oh yeah, that's right. Judge genetically augmented his children. And Sanji's like, hate to break it to you, but I'm a perfectly normal human being. And he's like, yeah, right. What kind of. It's not just anyone can feet, set their bodies on fire unless you're a Lumerian. Lumerian? I don't know, something like that. And then Jack's like, and then Jack just kind of gives Queen a look like, why would you reveal my race? And I'll talk about that in just a sec. But that kind of brings back to my point where Sanji may not have been fully genetically changed due to the experiments, but he may have had some enhancements. Because it's like, yeah, Sanji so far is the only person without the use of hockey who can really set their body on fire and consistently do it. Sure, we see it with Luffy's Red Hawk, but he's using hockey, and it's only for a short period of time, just that quick punch. Sanji, however, he can keep it going for a long time, so that probably means that his skin is probably harder than most people's. Again, not on the same level as his siblings, obviously, but it takes a lot to get as strong as Sanji is. And he doesn't seem to train as much as Zoro or Luffy do. Well, keep in mind, Luffy trained for like 10 years. And Sanji obviously had to train to get to where he's at, but probably not as much as Zoro or Luffy. So it's like, yeah, he probably had some genetic stuff, but probably not enough to make him compatible with the raid suit. Wait, back to King's race, Lumerian, and I have a little, and it's like, why would King care if they knew what race he was? And it's just like, well, what if it's a race that the celestial dragons want to wipe out completely? I have no clue why that is. But thing is, King obviously has a huge bounty on his head. We don't know how huge. It hasn't been revealed yet, which is weird because we know Jax, we know Queens, we even know Kaido's, and King and Queen are both over a billion bear. Isn't like King's 1 billion? Isn't not King's? Jax 1 billion even, and like Queens is like 1.3 billion. But the thing is, the fact that King doesn't want people to know what his race is. What if he has like a ridiculously high bounty because of what race he is? Imagine, I'm not going to say that's as high as Kaido's or higher or anything, because, the only people to ever pass the 5 billion berry mark as far as, bounties go is Roger and Whitebeard. At least as far as pirates go, but King's a pirate, so obviously that falls under that. Dragon may have a bigger bounty, but anyway. So yeah, I just found that kind of interesting. The fact that we learn what King's race is, and King did not like the sound of that. So yeah, a Lumerian and Loon, Loon, that kind of stuff. You think of the moon when you hear stuff like that. You don't really think of like fire or anything like that. But yeah, it's interesting. So anyway, and then we get into the bread and butter of the chapter for me as a huge Zorro fan. Remember when I said Vivi was one of my all-time favorite characters? Zorro is my all-time favorite One Piece character. Period. But anyway, Zorro's connection to Ryuma. Haguro, or however you pronounce his name, again, not looking it up, is just watching Zorro, and he's just keeps comparing him to Ryuma. And that other guy with Ryuma's same surname, the guy who was executed, I can now remember his name. But anyway, how they were both masters of the sword. And this is very interesting. A lot of people have speculated that Zoro might be related to Ryuma, because we actually have a photo of Ryuma when he was, young, before he was a corpse by Gecko Moria. And I'm not going to show it because, editing. Uh, but if you look it up, he literally looks like Zoro with black hair. And that is pretty much it. I'm sure he's less bulky than Zoro is now, but like, say, a pre time skip Zoro looks exactly the same. And it is just crazy. So yeah, Zoro might be a descendant of him. Because keep in mind, we really don't know much about Zoro's past. We know about him and Kuina, and we know that he was a bounty hunter for a while. And that we don't really know much about him. We know he was going from town to town challenging people to sword fights. And he just naturally had good skill with sword and a huge work ethic. Uh, but we don't even know who Zoro's parents are. And that's the funny thing. Like, aside from uh, Nami, Brook, and Jinbei, we don't know any of Zoro's parents. And Zoro didn't seem to get separated from them like Nami did. And he's also not like an old man like Jinbei or Brooks. So, Brooks' parents have been dead for years. There's no doubt about that. So, probably pretty irrelevant. Jinbei is, I can't see why we would look into his ancestry. We might, but doesn't really feel like it. But it's always bugged me that we have never even heard the name of Zoro's parents, because I don't think he doesn't know who they are. Roronoa Zoro, he knows his whole name. We haven't heard Nami's whole name, or Usopp's, or Jinbei, or Brook. Wow, we really need to get some surnames. Well, Nami's probably going with Bellamir's surname because she doesn't know her own. But anyway, it's always bugged me that because, like, he may have Ryuma's surname. One that I kept trying to pronounce earlier, but kept butchering the pronunciation of it, so you can look it up yourself. But anyway, they keep comparing his fighting style to that of Ryuma's. Granted, Ryuma used one sword style while Zoro uses three sword style. But in the fight between him and Jack, not him and Jack, him and King, I'm god awful with names, as you can probably tell. King's like, why do you fight with traditional style? And apparently, King never claimed to be a great swordsman. But Zoro's like, I will do whatever it takes. Sure, I'm a trained fighter who uses traditional sword fighting styles, which is kind of weird for a guy to say with a sword in his mouth, you know, especially a katana. I think katanas are usually used for one sword style, not Sandoryu. But whatever. But he will do whatever it takes to win. And this next part that they bring up is pretty interesting to me. Normally, I don't go with like physical marks in One Piece uh, as a really good representation of anything. Well, except for the fact that Luffy kind of has some inherited will of his ancestry, because Garp has a scar on the left side of his face. Dragon has that tattoo on the left side of his face. Luffy obviously has that scar on the left side of his face. Or am I getting those confused? Are they actually on the right? No, left, I think. But anyway, they mention that Ryuma was a one-eyed swordsman. And looking back to Thriller Bark, I can't remember if I recently rewatched Thriller Bark. I can't remember if Ryuma had he did have one eye. I can't remember if it was the same eye as Zorro. So One Piece. One of the main things about uh, One Piece is the idea of inherited will. A lot of people in this series say, even though Roger wasn't his father or anything, that he has his inherited will. That's why Shanks even gave Luffy the hat in the first place, because he was like, Roger's spirit lives in that boy. And, some people speculate that Teach has the inherited will as the Beck, because he wants to go after his ambitions, but and he has, ideals and similarities to Luffy, but he's a much darker version of it, which might be the same thing as Roger to Zebek. We don't know anything because we don't know anything about Zebek, but that could be the case. And the fact that Teach can also rally up a group of misfits that probably generally would try to kill each other rather than work together. And that's the same thing that Zebek did. Granted, a lot of Rock's pirates did kill each other, but that's besides the point. He was able to get Big Mom, Whitebeard, and have Kaido as an apprentice on his ship. So Teach has the inherited will of that. And anyway, that's a story. That's for another video some other day. But Zorro may be a direct descendant, which, which kind of makes sense because, like I said before, he looks exactly like Ryuma. But he might also have his inherited will. And remember what Ryuma was known as? He was known as a man who was able to slay dragons. So a lot of people speculate that Luffy will be the one to bring down Kaido, which he might. I'm not gonna say that he won't, because Luffy is stronger than Zoro. But Zoro, the fact that Zoro officially unlocked his Conqueror's spirit on Wano, and for you anime only watchers, no, not at the recent anime episode we saw, that was filler. Poorly timed filler that I wish they didn't make. But filler. No, he unlocks it when he goes up against Kaido. Now, he may have already used it before in the series. There have been times where he's intimidated people. Some people speculate that all those demon auras and stuff and Ashura, they were projections of Conqueror's Haki. But we don't know that yet. Those could just be fun things that, Oda put in the series just for fun. But granted, we also thought that about Diablo Jambe, and we're getting a little bit more details on that today. So yeah, like the fact that Zoro may have the inherited will of Ryuma, and may be the one to bring down Kaido. We don't know. Granted, as far as the plot goes, it would make. Sorry, it's still kind of early for me, since I work at night. But Zoro. since what was I saying? Oh, right, plot wise, Luffy would make much more sense to bring down Kaido because that's what the plot's building towards. But Luffy's not gonna be able to take down Kaido on his own. He's not going to be able to. Zoro's gonna help him. There's no doubt about that. And now I just want to briefly touch on Dogstorm versus Jack and Cat Viper versus Sparrow. And there's also Rizo versus that earlobe guy. Those are fights that I hope to see later on. We've got Dogstorm and Cat Viper back in their Sulong forms. Viper is now on site, and Dogstorm found a little hole in the wall, hole in the ceiling. And, being up against Jack, he wants to be in his Sulong form because he's a strong guy without it, but he's not on Jack's level. Jack is ridiculously strong. Again, not as strong as like King, Queen, or Kaido, obviously, but very strong. And so Dogstorm and Cat Viper, they go back into their Sulong forms. Viper beat the crap out of Sparrow. No surprise there. Sparrow is stronger than most people think, but he's not on like Katakuri's level, obviously. But anyway, those two and Rizo, they continue their fights and they chant. And Dogstorm and Rizo chant about how they're Odin's vassals. They don't get to call themselves that if they don't help usher in the new dawn and stuff like that. And yeah, just some brief things I wanted to touch on, just for the sake of touching on them. But finally, we have the last panel. Laws, not the last panel, the last couple of pages. Law's men are going like, well, when did Kaido get here? What's Kaido doing here? And then it cuts to Luffy facing a giant dragon. It's not Kaido, because I think it's definitely smaller than Kaido's dragon. Though that kind of emphasizes just how huge Kaido is in dragon form. But no, it's Momonosuke. The mature lady, what's her name? I can't remember. Man, I cannot remember anyone's name in this review. But anyway, she used her devil fruit power to age Momonosuke to 28 years old. And now his devil fruit ability aged with him. He is now a full-grown dragon. And it is an awesome panel. Just seeing how Momonosuke went from this dragon that's just a little bit bigger than Luffy to this just slightly smaller than Kaido dragon. And now they're going to go up and they are going to try to take Kaido down. Momonosuke is probably not going to help because, he's 28 years old. He's technically, physically 28 years old now, but he's still mentally probably like, 8 or something? So, yeah, he's probably just going to be Luffy's ride. And, which would make sense. So he's going to make, and he might, although, here's one thing Momonosuke could do. He could counteract Kaido's flame clouds and bring the island back down before it can hit the main island of Wano. So, he might do that. He might drop Luffy off and be like, okay, I gotta go bring this giant island down so that way it doesn't crush a bunch of innocent people. So, yeah. And this was just a great chapter. I cannot wait to read the next chapter. I don't know if it'll come out next week. Might come out in a couple weeks. Because that's usually how it is. It's like 1-2 weeks of chapters, take a week off. 1-2 weeks of chapters, take a week off. So yeah, but like just ending on this and not getting a chapter next week, it's gonna drive me nuts. But if it's how it is, it's how it is. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Click that bell to be notified every time I upload a video, which I will do one of these every single week. Though it takes forever to get out because for some reason lately I haven't had this problem until recently, but it keeps taking forever to upload a video. Like it will take easily 2 days for me to be able to upload a video, and it drives me nuts. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and as always, adios. Adios.